I think the one major tip that I think we can come out of this conversation right now is to improve your flow, read your work aloud.
Definitely, because the
Right.
out loud part is really what matters. Like reading it silently it's not the same. It's just not the same.
No, that's what I do.
It's like trying to read song lyrics without hearing the tune. Like you're missing a big point of it.
Yeah,
right. It's not translating the same in your head, or it's not coming out the right way. So read your work aloud after you've written it. That was redundant.
Yeah.
So
good afternoon. It's the Wright Brothers, Shane McLean and Chris Colucci, coming at you through your video screen. And today we're going to talk about a little known subject when it comes to writing, but it's also very important, not only for getting published, but just for making the sense for the reader. It's called flow. We're going to call it writing flow. So we've obviously heard when we get into a flow state and everything becomes easy and you're in the zone and you're playing out of your skin and the hoop is larger and the ball keeps going in. So kind of translating that to writing. So when we write an article, depending on what type of article it is, we want it to follow from one logical point to the next. So the reader can follow along. So when the reader is able to follow along, they're going to read your article. And the reader's not going to be able to follow along. They're going to close that screen. So we're going to talk a little bit about flow today, and I'm going to talk about what it means to me, and then Chris is going to riff about what it means to him as an editor. So it took me a long time to learn flow in writing, how to move from one logical point to the next, because Chris has mentioned before that the point of one sentence is to get the reader to read the next sentence. And that's kind of like what we're talking about flow. So I think that the flow part really starts in the introduction. So I like in my introduction to let the reader know what's coming next. So if I'm talking about the 5 best alternatives to the barbell bent over row, then I'm going to say, well, this is how I'm going to write. This is how I'm going to approach it. I'm going to say how the barbell row is great, why it's not great for some people, and what a good alternative would look like with a bunch of criteria, and then 5 alternatives meeting that criteria above. And I've been writing those articles quite a bit recently for Muscle and Fitness, but each part flows from the next, and it makes it easy to follow, but it also makes it extremely readable. What do you think, Chris?
I think you nailed it. I think it comes down to making the content easy to read and easy to digest. So it makes sense. And so it's easy for the reader to get through. So we have talked before. I like eggs. I like movies. Those sentences mean nothing. They're random.
Yeah, right.
But remember we were talking the other day and we were talking about breakfast, and I told you I have eggs for breakfast most days. And you remember back in Rocky when he drank all those raw eggs? I can't do that. Okay.
Who's raw eggs?
So same thing. We talked about us talking and eggs and Rocky or movies. But it flows a little bit better when you connect those separate thoughts.
Yeah.
Okay. So getting logical, smooth writing makes things make sense. And when things make sense to a reader, they sink into their brain and they're more likely to remember them and apply them later on, which is ultimately what you want to do with your training and nutrition information. Like you write stuff so people can go and use it and benefit from it and then come back and learn more. It's a cycle. Like you said, I like the way that flow has to do also with basically formatting is essentially what we're talking about too. Yeah. The way you format your article, you have your introduction, which we had a whole video talking about how to do a good introduction. Pop the link up. You just do a short introduction, introducing your topic idea. You transition from your introduction to your main body to make your main points. And then you kind of segue out a little conclusion and a call to action or reinforce some takeaways. And in that main body section, depending on your overall topic, like you said, you're going to cover the pros and cons of the barbell row and what the actual alternatives would be and why these alternatives are better than other things or whatever the specifics are. But you need to kind of go step by step and approach each point that you want to get through in a logical, reasonable manner, not just random like bullet points, because that might be quicker to read, but it's not efficient or effective. It's not going to stick in their brain.
So we know we've talked about before about, varying your sentence structure and your length of your sentences and the length of your paragraphs. That's a pretty important part of flow, don't you think?
It is. That's like the nitty gritty of if a sentence is clunky and either too long and goes way too long and rambles, versus being just too short and too choppy to read, where I like eggs, I like movies, we talk, we're friends, we whatever, da-da. Like these sharp points that kind of poke out of nowhere and don't really flow from one to the next. Like the quote you were saying that we've referred to, and I don't know where I first heard it, but the point of the first sentence is to get the reader to read the second sentence. And the point of the second sentence is to get the reader to read the next sentence. Like that's just smooth flowing and easy reading. And you kind of, it's like you know it when you see it, and you know it's missing when you don't see it.
Yeah.
Like if you see bad writing and it's just difficult to get through and you're kind of trying to figure out why or where this paragraph is going to go, regardless of the topic, it's difficult reading and it's counterproductive.
I mean, one thing that I do, like you said, formatting is a huge part of it, in the headings and subheadings and stuff like that, when you're obviously changing subjects. But if I'm like, say, if I'm about to change tack from one paragraph to the next, say, even in the intro, basically it's a new paragraph. So you don't tack on a completely random point at the end of a paragraph that belongs in a new paragraph. Does that work? Is that right?
So. I think that makes sense. Like paragraphs are just the ways you break up your ideas. I think we've said before is that one trick to online writing, any material that appears online on a screen or on a phone, shorter paragraphs are easier to read. It's easier for the audience just to scroll through.
Because they're like packed in, right?
They're shorter. They're shorter to just visually see on a screen. So if you want to keep your paragraphs to 2 or 3 sentences or something, whereas if you were writing like a print magazine or a print book, you could get away with just a much bigger chunk of text, just the way like your eyes gloss over the information or whatever.
Yeah, the column format. Yeah,
the columns, the margins, and all that.
Yeah.
So if you're writing online, which 99% of us are doing right now, try to make it a point to keep your paragraphs a little bit shorter, but you don't have to compromise and shortchange your information. Just break up those ideas.
Like into paragraphs.
Yeah, into a couple more paragraphs. It's shouldn't be that hard to do.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Well, I get one of my issues with my writing that editors always pull me over is I don't explain things fully enough when I write things out, because I want to kind of just go straight to the point. So that's a really fine line between doing too little and doing too much. It's like, I know there's plenty of space in between when it comes to having to explain a point, because editors like to keep the word count down for the most part. They don't like big long articles on the internet, right? So because they know we all have a short attention span. So that's the issue that I run into, is either explaining too much or not enough, and that has a big part to do with flow. And that's just something that comes with practice, I think. And I still have trouble with it.
It is. Well, a lot of that is practice, and the more, like just like the skill of writing, the more you write, the more comfortable you'll be writing, and the better you'll get at it. But this is where it ties back to probably the most common thing we keep repeating ourselves on is if you just write as if you're talking to a client. Like most personal trainers or nutrition consultants know how to have a halfway decent conversation, one person to another. And in a conversation, you're going to have natural flow. You might have tangents and things, which that's what editing's for.
Yeah.
But in a conversation, you generally know how to get from one idea of yours to the next. When you're writing out that information, you have the benefit of going slow and revising as you go. Like, we can't edit our words. I would be editing so much as I speak right now.
Well, men definitely can't edit their words.
Yeah.
There's much filter between the brain and the mouth, particularly with me.
No filter.
Yeah, no filter.
So that's what, if you keep in mind, writing flow is a conversation. It's essentially a one-sided conversation that you're having when you put your thoughts on a page. So if you keep that in the back of your mind,
it's a good idea.
That could be helpful to kind of keep things going in a conversational, a smooth and logical and understandable way. So it comes out like you want it to come out.
That brings up a really great point. That just further emphasizes the fact that you need to read your work aloud.
Yep, that's
and that's something I don't do a lot of. I'm going to throw myself under the bus here. Something I don't do a lot of. So I think the one major tip that I think we can come out of this conversation right now is to improve your flow, read your work aloud.
Definitely, because the out loud part is really what matters. Like, reading it silently it's not the same. It's just not the same.
No, that's what I do.
It's like trying to read song lyrics without hearing the tune. Like, you're missing a big point of it.
Yeah,
right. It's not translating the same in your head, or it's not coming out the right way. So read your work aloud after you've written it. That was redundant.
Yeah.
So yes, read your work aloud, and you'll hear, if you're paying attention to what you're saying, you'll hear, like, are you being redundant? Are you rambling? Are you jumping from one idea to the next? Do you catch yourself being like, wait, where did I say to grab the barbell? I didn't say to grab the barbell. So you have to go back and plug that in. So that's a huge, huge hack, secret, tip, tweak, whatever. Read your work aloud before publishing it or sending it.
So this is something that just jumped in my head. So how people put on these sentences on the internet and they deliberately spell the words wrong, but when you read it, you know exactly what the word means.
Yeah. Yes.
But if you were to, so you can, in your mind, what the word means and how it's said, even though it's spelled incorrectly on the page. That makes it even more important to read your work aloud because your brain plays tricks on you.
You mean like the T-shirt you're wearing right now?
Yes.
Which says "Buck Furpies."
How many people still don't get this T-shirt? They can't be my friends.
For those listening, not watching,
I wore this T-shirt to my son's high school because I had to drop something off.
Oh.
And my wife came home and said, "Did you wear that T-shirt to my son's high school?" And I said, "I don't care.
It's not a dirty word.
Kids know how to swear."
Well, yeah.
But isn't that interesting though? With you know exactly what I'm talking about with the words, how they deliberately misspell them, but your mind still recognizes that as the word.
Yeah, it's a mental trick. If you transpose letters in a word, as long as the first and last letters are the same, you can basically self-dyslexia any word, and the majority of people will still be able to read it.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll throw up an example. Maybe that's a good idea for a social media post we'll do.
Yeah. But so that's why it's important, because we're writing it out in our brain and we're reading it in here when we're writing. And, this is fantastic! I'm going to win a Pulitzer Prize. This is awesome. Then you read that out aloud. It's like, that's the importance of reading your work out loud.
It is. It catches typos that get missed. It just catches things that don't make sense. that your brain will otherwise trick you and be like, no, you're good. You rock. You wrote it, so clearly it's good. Not always the
Yeah.
case. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's real. I mean, I think particularly when you're writing an article, like we said, we should read our work aloud. But also, I think what really helps with writing flow, what I brought up before, is letting the reader know what's happening next. Like, the point is to get from one sentence to the next sentence. So letting the reader know what's coming next, like, kind of mentally prepares for the next sentence, and then the following sentence, and the following sentence. And then when you use sub headlines and so on and so forth, it just makes it a lot easier to read.
It does. Yeah. That ties back to formatting and the layout of how you visually structure the points you want to make. If you're doing, an arm workout article, 12 weeks to bigger guns. You want to have the exercises and the sets and the reps and, maybe a section on nutrition, because you're not going to build arms if you don't change your nutrition. Maybe a section on
arms are built in the kitchen.
Arms are, get that t-shirt going. Arms are built in the kitchen. Okay, abs. That's it. I like that.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's fine. So if you're doing that, you need to cover everything that is related to that arm workout. Maybe also a lot of times I don't see in specialization programs is, what do you do for the rest of your body? Like, it's worth saying, it's worth noting, cool, 12 weeks I'm working bis and tris. What do I do for back and chest? Like, include a section for here's what else you do during the week. Which is that's a big thing. It gets overlooked a lot, but it's a very relevant point, which you would talk to a client. You say, hey, you know what? Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we're training arms. Tuesday, Thursday, you're going to do back, chest, legs, whatever. So that's one example of like.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Thank you.
Right? Yeah.
So
I know exactly what you're talking about. I've seen that before.
Yeah. I mean, it happens a lot, and it shouldn't.
They don't really say what you should be doing outside of that.
Exactly. So that's one way that, like, in that type of article, to have a good flow and cover everything you want to cover is really what it comes down to. You just make sure you're addressing all your points. And again, speaking of more specifically in flow, you wouldn't start an arm workout article with, here's when you train back and chest. I didn't sign up. That's not what I want to read. I want to read the arm workout first. Give me the other information, but that's not the most important point. So if you lead off an arm workout with, here's when you train calves, like, you're going to lose readers. Yeah, that should be like one of the last points that you cover before you close out. So that would be good or bad flow. Addressing the main point of the article up front and then getting to the rest of the stuff.
That's an excellent point. Yeah. The most important parts, stuff first. Right? Because that makes perfect sense. I know I'm rambling on now, but yeah, you wouldn't start talking about something completely random and then jump into it when the headline says something different. So I think you bring up a good point, is that the first sentence should flow from the headline.
Right. Yeah. The headline, the title is your main point. It's what people want to read. It's the reason people open the article or said, yes, I want to learn the best keto friendly desserts. If you start with, well, when you're training keto, you should also whatever, run a marathon. Like, nobody cares.
Yeah.
Give me the dessert recipe first.
Yeah. Keep to the point, I think, is what you're trying to say. So I think an important part of flow is keeping to the point.
That is the 100% bottom line. Yes. Keep to the point, get to the point, right off the bat, and then cover whatever needs covering after. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, that's true. I think we covered it. Is there anything else that we need to talk about with flow?
Okay. I mean, that's to me, we're talking the flow of an article. We're not talking like, flow is in like workflow in the zone. That's a whole different thing. We're talking
That's a whole
flow in
different
terms of flow on the page, the flow of the content itself, not the flow of your output. So yeah, I think that's it. It's know your main points, cover your main points as priority. Reread your work out loud to make sure things make sense and sound reasonable. And
Yeah.
but
And
if what?
I was going to say,
Yes.
if you want to know if your article flows, where would be a good place to send that article, Chris?
I would send a choppy, disjointed email to therightspotters@gmail.com, and we'll reply and say, yes, we'll help you, but this email needs work. So you can email us any questions at therightspotters@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at therightspotters. Just track us down. Let us give you some help. Let us get your ideas out on the page so people know what you're talking about. And
That's what we're here for.
That is what we're here for.
Let it flow, baby. Let it flow.
Let it flow. Let's let it. Me, the Disney princess. Okay. All right, guys.
Okay, we're going to end with that.
Talk to you later.
Okay.
Thanks.
See ya.
Bye.